Well, first of all, thank you for taking the time out. It's your retirement. So perhaps that'll be the first question. How has it been, since you let the reins off at MNRE, and how have you been spending your time?
Is it related to green hydrogen?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you for inviting me, Nishaanth. It's a pleasure to be here, and of course see this large crowd. I was told when I was talking to Nishaanth long ago, he said, yeah, we're organizing something, and I think he did mean a round table, but I think now there are several round tables in this room, one room, so but good to see such a big crowd, such a lot of experts and from the industry here. I mean, I have now spent this is my 5th month of my retired life, a quote-unquote retired life, and I think I'm busier than ever before. And I really don't know how the time flies. I've been traveling, I've been reading, I've been doing some stuff, trying my hand at some woodwork. I've done, arts and things, lots of
Stepping
things.
into the kitchen as well, you told me.
Yes, I've been baking, so learning baking, and I'm doing something. So a lot of things. And of course, spending time. It's been, of course, the best time in Delhi, and despite the pollution, of course. It's winter means you can be outside. So and I have the luxury of going for a walk at 11 a.m. in the morning, and I'm making everyone jealous. But that's how I spend the time.
Thank you very much, sir. But before I go into green hydrogen, one more quick question for you. You've had a successful career, I think more than 35 years in the services, and you've retired with a lot of respect. A lot of us here are at the penultimate stage in our careers, either they're at the middle or at the end, and very few of us beginning our careers as well. What are some of the qualities that you think, we should continue to hold, to have successful careers? Because I know your career is very different from anybody else here, but what are those general qualities that you think someone should have to be successful in what they do here?
I think one must be enjoying what one is doing, and that's very important. So if you're enjoying, you make sure you are doing something which you enjoy. If not, then you have to think of a change, number one. Number two, I would say, if you're doing well, then don't change. The grass is always greener on the other side. That's a fact. If things are going well, let it run. Enjoy that moment. Spend some time. Let it roll. And I'm sure there will be a moment when you'll realize that yes, now this is the time that this is enough. But I think, sometimes, and I've done that in my life as well. I mean, although your life, many of you move from one company or industry to another, so you have that change available. But in our career also, in the civil services, we do something different all the time. Every 2 years, I do something different. And I've done all my life. So, but sometimes you have an option, sometimes you don't have an option. But I think, sometimes I felt I was doing well, but I felt, no, I need change. And then later I realized that I should have continued and enjoyed that moment rather than going into different pastures. Of course, overall, the run seems good, so one is happy, but, that's something that I thought is important. It's very important to keep learning. It's very important to try something new. Because you cannot do this. I mean, I'm sure that many people, and maybe, maybe I'm going out of my limit, but if you want to do same thing for 30 years, then you have to think something different. I mean, you would get bored beyond, unless you are growing in that same assignment, doing something different, same company, but doing something different over 30 years, 20 years. I think one has to keep looking at it. I mean, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. I didn't give all of these questions to sir last night. I only gave him 4 questions on the National Green Hydrogen Mission. So this was him being very spontaneous, but also being very straight from the heart. I think that was great. Thank you for sharing those. I think a lot of them here are very keen and eager to hear, on the National Green Hydrogen Mission itself. You came in when the mission was, past its initial stages. It was already set, and you had to take over before it was launched. So what was the thinking back then? How was it conceptualized, and what were the key factors that drove this National Green Hydrogen Mission for India?
Yeah, originally, the mission was, of course, formulated before I arrived on the scene, and the intention was to have India on the green hydrogen map along with the other countries in the world. Many regions and countries were already had brought out policies, they were planning to bring out some had come out with draft policies. However, India was still thinking about it. So the plan was to have an ecosystem, to build an ecosystem which matches with the best in the world. That was the original intention. But when I came in, they were still it had taken too long to get finalized, and therefore I was given the responsibility of getting the final approval through. And that means giving a pitch, explaining and making changes required to make sure that the policy happens. And so that's how I joined on 1st of November 2022, and the mission was launched on 4th of January 23. So 2 months it took for not only understanding what was required, but also convincing the government that this is the way forward for India. So that was the way. The intention was very clear. Overall intention was very clear. Make India the global hub for green hydrogen production. That is as simple as that. But if you want to make India a global hub for production, then you have to make sure that you have to have many things in place. You just cannot do, as I was mentioning just now, a little over lunch, that it's not very simple to bring out a policy and say, oh, we should become the global hub of production. You have to make sure that it satisfies the industry, which has to put up plants. There should be enough clarity of what the government policy is, what are the incentives which are going to be available, what are the regulations which are going to be in place. Is the government forward-looking? Is the future there? You have to have the whole ecosystem in place. So it's not only a question of green hydrogen production facility. Are the electrolyzers going to be manufactured in India? I mean, do you have to have that ecosystem in India? Or you want to depend on imports for electrolyzers? In addition, would you be looking at only electrolysis route? Would you be looking at the biomass route? I mean, the green hydrogen is, a lot of places, biomass route is as green hydrogen from biomass route is as good as green hydrogen, which we have included it in our mission. But some countries have not yet done so. But what would be that? So in our ecosystem that we built an incentive for green hydrogen production. We built in an incentive for electrolyzer manufacturing, but that was not going to be enough. For the whole ecosystem to be there, you needed to focus on technology, you needed to focus on improvement in technology. You don't want to be dependent on the world, and therefore there was an R&D component. Then there is, testing facilities have to be there. In India, you can't be sending everything abroad for testing. There have to be requisite facilities across India for green hydrogen value chain. In addition, then you have to have, skilling. You need skilled people. You need the whole ecosystem. And therefore, the mission kept enough, not only provisions for all these elements, but also brought in all the relevant ministries of Government of India, the relevant departments and ministries, and stated very formally that this has to be a whole of government approach for the mission. It is not a mission run by one ministry alone. It is going to be a ministry coordinated by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, but run by the government. And that's how it was planned, and that is why. So we build the whole ecosystem. And very interesting thing, I must tell you, this is the first mission that I know of. Usually every mission, every program has an empowered group of secretaries, which means a panel of secretaries who are dealing with the stuff, who then take decisions. Normally it is headed by the cabinet secretary, but there are this relevant ministry and there might be some other concerned ministries. Here, this is one mission where we called the group the empowered group, not the empowered group of secretaries, because we felt the industry should be part of this group for the first time ever. So therefore, now we have industry members in the empowered group, which takes all the the major decisions on strategy for execution of the mission. And therefore, so we did. So all this had to be built in when we were launching the mission, and therefore, the overall plan, of course, was making India a green hydrogen hub for the world, not only for production but also for export. And therefore, our larger focus, we outlined a target of 5 million metric tons per annum of green hydrogen, out of which a majority is targeted to be exported, and a part is meant to be used domestically. We have a large market. We are a large country, and I think we have enough possibilities in domestically to utilize the green hydrogen which is going to be produced in the country. I think these are largely, I would say, the main elements in which we set up the mission.
You touched upon quite a lot of points there, sir, but before I go into some of them, I think I've heard it from you. You said only 3 things why India needs green hydrogen. Number 1 is energy security, our forex reserves, and then for climate, right? This is the larger thinking, but now as you dwelled on some of the work that you've done, building the testing facilities, doing the skilling, I think, the ministry, when you were secretary, they've reached out to me on numerous occasions to find ways to do this, and that's when we realized that for the first time, India is in front in this industry, right? We're not behind anybody. Okay, maybe some people would say China, but I think globally, for the first time, India is in a position of leadership in this space, and I think industry has been responding well to this. But as you mentioned, that green hydrogen itself is so complicated. It's not, it's not one industry. It's the production itself brings 2 industries together. The applications bring in close to 7 or 8 industries, right? Looking at where, wherever you're seeing the applications. Now, moving into the execution of that mission, sir. During your time, the mission, when 2023, it was clearly laid out, these are the timelines, this is what we will do. And it was going like clockwork, right? And everything, most things have been done, except for, some of the refinery tenders that we've touched upon. But when this was launched, did you see that, did you ever feel that there might have been challenges and this would not go according to plan?
I think when you're launching a new mission in a nascent area, any nascent area, you really don't know what's going to happen. You are hoping that since you are trying to do the best because you have planned for it, you feel and hope that it will take off. You feel the industry would come forward and participate, because the government is not going to do anything. It's for the industry to come in. We are only going to be a facilitator. We are only going to be a stakeholder in trying to make things happen. And this for the industry to take it up. And I was of course, but everything, of course, was up in the air. We were among the first, among the few countries which launched the green hydrogen or similar missions across the world. The best thing was that immediately after we launched, we had, of course, a lot of questions, but we were confident that this has the ability to succeed. And as you mentioned a little while ago, energy security, of course, has been paramount for India. We already have net zero. We have energy independence as 2047 target. Our 2030 target is only based on the capacities that we want to have, right? Electricity capacity, which is going to be powered by renewable energy or non-fossil sources. But if you want to move towards net zero, it's the other sectors, the hard-to-abate sectors, which have to be addressed. So unless we move towards that, we will only be focusing on electricity generation, which only consumes about 21% of our energy basket. How do you, move towards decarbonizing the other sectors? And that is why green hydrogen has become important. After we launched, and immediately after that, the kind of maybe I'm being immodest, but the kind of compliments Indian policy got from not only Indian industry, but also industry around the world and other countries was remarkable. And that's why I think immediately, I would say in the next 15 days or 3 weeks of the launch, when we had announced it, when we had come out with the policy, we had some interaction with the industry, that the actual feedback, positive feedback started coming that yes, you are not only on the right track, but you also come out with it on time. Is one of the most timely missions of the government. And therefore, that kind of, helped us, all the doubts that we have, which were on the back of our mind, of course, but not, of course, publicly mentioned. But yes, one always has to be concerned about how it would. But I think within a few weeks of the launch, we were very confident that yes, we have done a pretty good job, at least in launching the mission. Yeah. Then, of course, the execution part was...
The execution was also spectacular, but this reminds me, yesterday I met a police officer who was trying to do something, and he was like, this is a government website. That's why it's hanging, right? And clearly, nobody expected the mission to be executed in the manner it was, right? Everything was at least timely. I'm sure there are a lot of developers here in the room ready to point out, all the challenges they've had. But things were executed on time, and that was remarkable. Now, does the world know that this is happening here? And, you've made some efforts in your time for that, to be addressed. I remember your remarks at our reception in Rotterdam. You said, look at India without a bias. And we have the ability to serve if you want to buy from us, right? So if you could elaborate on why, India had to take a more proactive approach to advertising itself, showcasing what inherent, opportunities and potential we have for green hydrogen.
We are a renewable energy giant in the making. That everybody realizes. We are already known for the progress we've made in renewable energy space. We have kept to our commitments, whatever commitment we've made. We have come out with a target of 500 gigawatt of non-fossil capacity by 2030. They have always been naysayers. They will be naysayers. We just touched 100 gigawatt of solar capacity last month. Mm-hmm. We just completed 100 gigawatt. Now, if you recall, 10 years ago, 2015, when this was announced that this is our target, I don't think anyone in the government had imagined, especially in MNRE, that yes, it will happen so quickly. It will happen. One is it will happen, and it will happen so quickly. And now we touched 100 gigawatt of solar. It's taken a little more time than what we anticipated. That's fine. But the ecosystem is there now. We are on the right track. Now we have a 500 gigawatt target. I mean, people may still ask me, are you confident that we'll be able to reach there? I mean, then let me give you some numbers. 100 gigawatt of solar. We should touch about 50 gigawatt of wind now before March. So we will be doing those milestones this year. This year we should be doubling our capacity compared to the last year. Mm-hmm. So people thought that we are stagnating at 15 gigawatt a year. How are you going to reach? This year we are going to do about 30 plus. And next year we hope to do about 50 plus. That's the kind of a goal we have. We have already touched non-fossil capacity of 217 gigawatt. We have 250 gigawatt of projects under implementation. We have a bidding of 50 gigawatt per year for the next 5 years minimum. So, and I'm not even counting our renewable energy which is going to be set up or used for green hydrogen plants. This is only meeting the electricity capacity requirement. And therefore, I'm very, very confident that we will achieve. And therefore, initially, of course, there was a lot of worries about whether we are going to meet. But again, we have to make sure this is the message which goes across to the world. And I have had interactions with all my international countries, counterparts who have been traveling to India. And MNRE is one of the ministries that most Countries do want to meet because they've heard so much of energy, what is happening in India, progress in energy, and we've been able to convince them. We have a large outreach budget relative to other missions or other programs. We have a pretty good size of outreach budget in this mission. And the prime purpose was to make sure that we are able to communicate, not only to the industry and people in India, but also the world, that this is what we are having. And initially, of course, first year we didn't do much of world interaction, but we started the international conference on green hydrogen. First time September 23, July or August 23. And then we had the second one in September 24. And now we want it to be an annual affair. So that's the event we started. In addition, last year, we started then, attending major international events. And in Rotterdam, I was very happy to communicate. We had one of the largest pavilions, and people were surprised at how is India, India has got one of the largest pavilions. And when we told them what all we are doing, I think then they realized that, yes, this is what the progress we are making in the green hydrogen mission. And first year, why we didn't do that was, that let's do the execution first, let's reach a stage we are able to tell you. So today, when we stand there and say that thanks to the launch of the mission, thanks to how the industry has positively taken it up and is confident about how we are doing it, that you have 17 or 18 companies announcing projects which are totaling to 7.5 million metric tons per annum, compared to our target of 5 million metric tons. And these are public announcements. This is not something that ministry asked them to give out. Yes, some of them may be slow, some of them may be thinking about it, but these are the public announcements. Out of, in the export sphere, we have about 2 million plus tons of green ammonia tied up for export, which are offtake agreement, term sheets, whichever terminologies you may use. You have several companies. In total, you have 2.5 million tons of green ammonia tied up. So that gives you the confidence now to stand up and shout that, yes, we are going to be there. We are going to be successful. We will execute and be successful in this mission. And that is how now we are more proactive in attending events and informing and, also telling people of what we are doing.
So on some of those numbers you mentioned on the projects, it's constantly increasing. And where, in the world, it's decreasing, where people are canceling the projects and scaling down the targets, none of the Indian companies have scaled down or cancelled a project. Right? There was only one small project that was cancelled, but otherwise, all those 123 projects we've been tracking, they're all on track. The electrolyzers, you mentioned how it was crucial for you to look at incentivizing electrolyzer manufacturing to support the ecosystem, learning from the lessons, from the past, but also learning now and how we've scaled solar and wind, like where and how do you think we should apply, into the green hydrogen sector? And maybe if you could touch upon, your idea and thinking on why you had to incentivize electrolyzer manufacturing as well.
I think we were very clear right from the beginning that unlike solar, where we thought we were delayed, we could have done, we were focusing on renewable energy. We're not saying, see, initially one had to take, it's a pragmatic approach. You want the renewable energy to grow, so you want it to happen because you wanted to reduce the cost of renewable energy. So you had to have a price which appeals to the market, which appeals for it to grow and people, discoms to buy. And therefore, initially the focus was on expanding solar. Wind was already there. Expanding solar because that's something we thought was important for the country, India being a sun-blessed country. So therefore, that time, I think the focus was on bringing out facilities for production of solar energy. And therefore, we did not pay too much attention to the manufacturing part. But after a few years, you realized that yes, we must have an ecosystem because the prices we are vulnerable. We don't want to be vulnerable to the world on our energy security, and therefore it's important for manufacturing to come in. And in fact, if you see the last 5-6 years, the kind of growth we've had in solar now, we have touched about 70 gigawatt of solar manufacturing, solar module manufacturing. We have about 18 gigawatt of cell manufacturing in India, which is probably likely to grow to about 24 by the end of another 2 months, couple of months or so. So that's the kind of numbers. Now we are having the first wafer facility in India has already been rolled out. The polysilicon are coming in, but we expect that in the next 3 to 4 years, we should be fully self-sufficient as far as Indian demand is concerned. As far as Indian requirement is concerned, we should be fully self-sufficient across the value chain. In electrolyzer manufacturing, we wanted to make sure that we are starting the ecosystem simultaneously. We did not want to take a chance on letting the world supply the electrolyzer that we need. And therefore, we kept a component. We have about 4,500 crore, 4,440 crores for electrolyzer manufacturing. And we expected that we would fund about 20% of the cost. So we expected to fund about 3,000 megawatt of electrolyzers by this incentive that we had. And we did that in 2 tranches, and I'm very happy that entire incentive has been awarded by now. Now we have about 18 companies which have got capacities, and one of the elements we also ensured was that it must be balanced. It's not that one company should come and take it all. So we kept a cap because we want several companies to come and set up the ecosystem. And in fact, you look at the numbers, many of our colleagues are here, I'm sure, and they'll be happy, I'm sure, to give you some more details. If you look at the actual capacities, we have awarded capacities about 3,000 megawatt. I think the capacities which are actually planned by these companies are about 15 gigawatt or...
It's about 25.
Okay.
It's about 25 gigawatts.
I stand updated. So that's the kind of capacity. So therefore, the beauty of our incentive is that you incentivize only a part. However, that is sufficient to kickstart the ecosystem to give the confidence to the industry to plan for bigger capacities, and that's what is happening. And 25 gigawatts of capacity, and you would know the numbers. If you have to set up a 5 million metric tons production capacity in India, you need to have electrolyzers worth about 100, 125, 50, 60 to 100 gigawatt of electrolyzers in India. And if you have a manufacturing capacity of about 10 to 20 gigawatt every year, it's good enough to set up by 2030 entirely Indian electrolyzers powering the electrolysis.
So there has been a lot of hype around this industry, right? We got ahead of ourselves a little too soon. Ambitious targets, but that was necessary for climate. Now things are slowing down, and of course, another key point to highlight here is it's clear that this industry for India is an export-oriented industry, and you've strategically put in that amount for outreach and whatnot. But now you see there has been a slowdown. It's not just it's global. It's impacting us because we are so outward-facing in this industry. What, in your own opinion, what do you think that the ministries that you work for could do, to catalyze this and also bring in those offtake agreements and ensure that this industry really takes off?
I hear, this is what we understand from what I read and how I interact with the industry, that at the moment, world over, of course, apart from one is world over, there is a kind of a pause on wondering whether green hydrogen is the magic pill for decarbonization. That's number one. So across the world, there are doubts about whether it is the only thing which is possible. And for example, in long distance transport, trucks and buses, is green hydrogen through fuel cell the key, or is better EVs the key to decarbonizing long distance transport, that kind of a thing. So world over at the moment, I think because of lack of clarity of demand in several countries, there is a thinking of a kind of a wondering about whether it has the near future that it was initially thought of. India is no different. We have, although the mission has been implemented pretty well, industry has made any announcement, has made its announcements, projects are being planned. I think there is a little feeling about the lack of demand. If world is not going to buy, then because we are going to be focused on exports, then that entire whatever we produce has to be then sold in India. That's number one. So as I mentioned, about 2 million metric tons of 2.5 million metric tons of green ammonia tie-ups for offtake abroad. But that's nothing. 5 million metric tons of green hydrogen means we need about 25 million plus 28 million, 30 million of green ammonia tie-ups. So we are only touching 10% of what the export should be, or could be overall. So on the export side, I think people are still waiting and watching on how the offtake agreements are taking shape. People are kind of pushing, trying to find a way. There is still, for example, we wanted to do agreements under Article 6.2 with several countries. That's still in the works. That should help in sharing the carbon credits for green hydrogen projects with the counterpart country, and thereby reducing the cost. In domestic demand, we came out with two big things, which is the green ammonia tender, the largest green ammonia tender in the world, of about 739,000 metric tons of ammonia to be procured per year and supplied to 15 fertilizer companies in India for their non-urea fertilizer manufacturing. That we started about 8-10 months ago, but it's still not been finalized because there have been a lot of doubts. Since it is delayed, people are wondering whether there is going to be domestic demand, enough domestic demand. So on the one side, export side, not too much of offtake agreements are happening. They are kind of slowed down. In domestic side, people are looking at two signals. One is the ammonia tender, whether the domestic demand grows. Second is the refinery sector, which has come out with tenders. Initially, there were a lot of delays. There were a lot of cancellation of tenders, but now I think new tenders have come out. We are hoping that this is going to be better than earlier. And therefore, if one tender succeeds, and then that ecosystem allows the other tenders to come in, because now I believe the people who have been awarded tenders under the sites, awarded incentive under the site scheme have also been made eligible. Earlier, there were a lot of restrictions on this. So I think we are at a stage where it's important to execute these couple of major things which are kind of near finalization. I think that will provide a good signal to the industry and to the world that yes, you are India, the industry which is wanting to set up plants would have the ability to go ahead and set it up. I think that's the kind of a feeling I've got in recent times. But I'm in projects or missions of this large scale, there are always going to be ups and downs. There are always going to be, because you need to balance the interest of the fertilizer industry or the agricultural consumer vis-a-vis the interest of the green hydrogen producers. So you have to balance it out in some way. Or for example, consumers of gasoline, petrol, diesel, and so on and so forth. So therefore, vis-a-vis the green hydrogen producers. So therefore, one has to balance it. So sometimes you have to take it a little slow. It happens. One does not want to push it down the throat and one does not want to also. Therefore, and it's a democracy, thriving democracy, and therefore one wants to do it something which is closer to what the market is, how it's taking shape rather than pushing it down and making it happen in one go.
So I think 2025 is a pivotal year, for all of us in the industry and some of these other elements in the mission that, this is the year for us to overcome. But, we're running out of time, but I do want to take 2 questions from the audience, if you don't mind. The first 2 hands up, you will get your 2 questions, right? Okay, so we have Shekhar and that gentleman there. If someone can give them a mic. So, but thank you very much for, sharing your unfiltered thoughts and still being passionate about this. You could have been walking in a park, like you said, but you're here with us, sharing all your insights. And I think you gave everyone a beautiful message, to enjoy what they do. And I think that's, that's something we all needed to hear. Shekhar, please. Shekhar, if you could also introduce yourself and your company.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bhallaji. My name is Shekhar from John Cockrell, Green Co. My question is for environment. The power ministry came out when the flue gas desulfurization was done that the developers were allowed to pass on the extra cost related to installing flue gas desulfurization systems to the users. Can similar thing, is it under works for, let's say, Ministry of Petroleum, wherein by shifting from gray hydrogen to green hydrogen, there is going to be marginal increase in petrol diesel price, Is there anything like that in works? Can it be worked out? Thank you.
We have kept a provision. Frankly, yes. We are all aware that even if we increase the usage of green hydrogen in refining, it would not materially affect the cost of petrol or diesel. That is given. But the fact is, as you know, this is one product which is the price of which is very, very closely watched by the entire country. And therefore, it's important for the industry to take the lead rather than government mandating it. We have kept a provision in the mission that we can mandate if we want. We can introduce a consumer, a consumption obligation. But we want the industry to take the lead. And in fact, for example, as you are well aware, the refining industry, public sector refiners have announced that they would like to convert 50% of their consumption to green hydrogen by 2030. And that's quite a big number. I think they have estimated about 900,000 tons, about 1 million tons of green hydrogen that they can use in the existing capacities by 2030. And that's something very significant. And in fact, what we were trying to mandate in the beginning, if you look at it, was very small. If the industry wants to do 50%, that's something that we would have done without having to mandate. And therefore, I don't think it will be done. The mandate will come because it won't be required. The only thing is if we can speeden up the process of how the refineries are bringing out tenders, making it happen, actual plants commissioning, it will lead to further usage of green hydrogen in the industry. I don't think the government plans to introduce a mandate because it has negative connotations. I think the industry is going to, if industry wants to do more, I think you don't need a mandate.
Thank you, sir. This gentleman next to Sudhir.
Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Smitesh. I represent a company called Jackson Green Infinity, which is actually a sister concern of the conglomerate distribution business Jackson Group. My question is, like you mentioned, finally we are on track on the green hydrogen front after a lot of roadblocks with refinery tenders now kicking in to conclusions. But you mentioned ammonia, right? With the 15 targeted 15 companies within India for fertilizers. Do you really think that's going to be that easy? Because fertilizers are already incentivized, and that would bring a lot of load, the additional incentive on that. Do you think it's going to be that easy? especially in ammonia within India for fertilizers?
See, this tender has been formulated, has been drafted in consultation with the fertilizer company, industry. It has been drafted in consultation with the Department of Fertilizer. It has been drafted in consultation with the industry. So we have convinced them to at least be part of the tender. Yes, for it to succeed, there will be two important conditions. One would be that the price that we discover is something which is closer to gray ammonia price as against what a normal green ammonia market price would be. Because it's going to be it's a big tender, there's going to be a lot of, it's a 10-year contract. So you're getting a clear demand for 10 years. So we are hoping that the actual price which is discovered is going to be much lower than the market price of gray ammonia currently. So that's number one. And number two, we are hoping that once we discover a price which is closer, we are hoping that the fertilizer industry will look at the stability of that price for 10 years vis-a-vis the gray ammonia price varying across 10 years. See, as you know, gray ammonia price varies with the price of natural gas. It keeps doing that, and it depends on troughs and highs. It is possible, and we are hoping that if you look at the overall 10-year time frame, if you look at the current market price of gray ammonia, you might say yes, it is higher than the gray ammonia market price. But if you look at a 10-year forward, and then you try to estimate what a gray ammonia price would be, it is possible that the companies may say, yes, 10 years for the same price, it makes sense. And therefore, we are hoping, I am sticking my neck out by saying that I would be banking on this big tender of green ammonia to break the kind of uncertainty in the market. And not only in the mind of the fertilizer industry, but I would say it would be which would change the mindset of the entire green hydrogen industry in India, if we are able to arrive at a price which is much lower than what you think it would be. I mean, I don't know what the price would be because it's still the price. No, the tenders have not come in. They've still not been discovered. So, but I'm hoping that it would be closer to that. And therefore, it is possible. One can look at all the gray scenarios and say, no, we are doomed. I am an optimist, frankly. And I look at the positive side. I will say, I am sure we'll get a price which is lower. So till then, one is only trying to outguess the other. So let's wait for the actual thing to emerge, and then we can talk.
Everyone has to be optimistic. You are also optimistic, that's good. But the thing is, this particular ammonia price which you are trying to establish, if it's not even near, it has to be lower than the green ammonia or at least equal, because that's going to have a direct impact on the common people.
That's what I was trying to tell you. It need not be equal, it need not be lower. As long as it is closer to the gray ammonia price, as much as it can be, and as long as for a 10-year time frame, people if you look at the current price, then you'll say there's a difference and therefore I have to go to Finance Department, Ministry of Finance. But if you look at a 10-year time frame, it is possible that one may agree that yes, this makes sense. So let's see what happens. But I think, therefore, these are two things. One is, of course, the tender issued by the refineries, which is to be finalized. And one, of course, is the grey ammonia tender. I think these two tenders would play a big role in how the current scenario takes shape of green hydrogen and how the mission carries forward.
There's no doubt about that. So some of the projects are looking to get their phase one only if they win the tender. But also, to throw something else I've heard from Arnava from AM Green, in the last 40 years, every 10 years, the price of grey ammonia went up 60%. So in 10 years, you're looking at a 60% increase straight away. So I think all of these factors are clear that, green hydrogen will have to succeed.
I must
overcome
also
grade.
mention, I mean, just a little aside. One, this is something which everybody, maybe this is not the right place, and maybe not the right experts here. One must evaluate the exact price, actual price of gray ammonia or gray hydrogen being used in the refining or in the fertilizer. A gray ammonia, if you're buying, of course, that price is fine. But in refining industry, I was told by one of the companies which is going for green hydrogen production, that it is 200 rupees or 180 rupees or 150 rupees is supposedly the price. However, the actual price is higher because many additional costs are not accounted for. Number one. Number two, they have found players, they have found market demand in India for a much higher price of green hydrogen. And that is the smaller industry. That is, there are many other industries in India which are small scale, medium scale, which use hydrogen in their processes. So it is possible this company is specializing in using that, tapping that demand. And they are not selling at the price of, the price that we feel green hydrogen should come down to. They are selling at about $4 to $5, the green hydrogen, what they are selling in India, green hydrogen. Because they are tapping these small scale, medium scale industries, which anyway, the cost is much higher because they are not on a large scale. So I'm saying people are finding these niche areas, niche places where they can market. Of course, but on a larger scale, if you want the mission to succeed, I think the refining sector and the fertilizer sector will play a big role. I mean, I'm not counting on the steel industry, where things will develop in the future, or the shipping sector, where again things will develop in the future. I'm totally counting on refining and fertilizer, which are going to play a big role in the success of the mission in the next few years.
So I think that gives us a good tangent into the next panel, which is going to talk about the progress. But thank you very much for joining us here today. A round of applause, please.
Pleasure.